between the Israelis and the Palestinians. I think the Israeli government has not been particularly helpful. I think the settlement policy is destructive. I think there are other players in the region, quite frankly, who have not been helpful. So we can sit here all day and point fingers and get absolutely nothing done. We need to figure out a way to kind of change the dynamic over there, and we should talk about the best way to do that. We need to help bring people on board, who have always supported Israel in a way that they didn't feel they could criticize Israel. We need to help them understand that the best way to help Israel is to actually change the dynamic over there, to move toward peace, to move toward kind of a different approach. And I'll be honest with you, if you go to Israel, there's a lot more discussion and a lot more talk about alternatives. I've met some really great people during my visits over the years, including mothers, Israeli mothers and Palestinian mothers who've come together because their sons have died in the conflict. Israeli mother lost her son to an action by the Palestinians. Palestinian mother lost her son to actions by the Israelis. And they don't want any of the mothers to suffer the loss that they did. And what they're basically doing is saying, look, we have a lot more in common here. We're mothers. We both loved our sons. We lost them. We got to figure out a way to bridge some of these divides that, quite frankly, when you think about it, don't make a lot of sense. But here's the deal. One of the ways we're going to help, bring an end to some of the violence, not only in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but in the Middle East, around the world, is to understand that it is more complicated than just about withholding arms or giving arms. It's about addressing some of these issues of extreme poverty, of lack of economic security, of no jobs, of no hope, of no education, and in many cases of no food. All these things matter. When you talk to Palestinians, most of the discussion is around, the terrible conditions in which they live. When you talk to people, who are engaged in, struggles all around the world, it all comes down to the same thing. We don't want to live in poverty. We want our kids to have enough to eat. And extreme poverty and hunger is a reality all over the world. And to be honest with you, until we have a plan that understands that, you're not going to have stability. You can have a peace agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians tomorrow, and if the next day people the Palestinians can't get a job, can't put food on the table, you're not going to have peace very long. And so we got to understand that, which brings us back to the importance of some of our trade agreements. I think we all understand that it's a good thing to be able to trade, but we all are committed to fair trade. And trade deals that are good for a few special, interests, and don't do anything to help, lift people out of poverty and give people hope, are catastrophic. We saw that with NAFTA. If NAFTA had been negotiated in a different way that tied wages to productivity in Mexico, or that gave average Mexicans an opportunity to earn more and to improve their quality of life, I think we'd be having a very different discussion in this presidential campaign. CAFTA, another disaster. I spent a lot of time in Central America during the 1980s, spent a lot of time in places like El Salvador. The poverty in El Salvador today is worse than it was before the war. And the violence in El Salvador today is worse than during the war. More people are dying today in El Salvador each day than they were dying at the height of the war. And the same thing all around the world. People want the same thing we all want. They want to earn a decent living. So, what is so controversial about negotiating trade agreements that give them that opportunity? I want to trade with everybody. But I don't want to trade with people where where the agreement itself keeps people down. The Colombia Free Trade Agreement. We did the Colombia Free Trade Agreement, and everybody was assured that this was going to be new, that the administration understood that labor rights is important. Colombia being had the distinction of being a country where it was the most dangerous place in the world to be a labor organizer or a trade unionist. So we said, look, so the administration did this labor action plan, which really didn't have a lot of teeth in it, but don't worry, we're going to make sure it gets enforced. Well, guess what? The agreement passes. It's still the most dangerous place in the world to be a labor organizer. And yes, we get some sympathetic voices to the Department of Labor that every once in a while will send us a little notation saying this is the problem. But the U.S. Trade Representative always seems to win out. And we're always told that everything is just great. So look, at some point or another, somebody will come along and negotiate a trade agreement that is the gold standard that we all can agree with. And that could be the model for the rest of the world. I hope we get there sooner rather than later. But we need to understand that the trade agreements that we've negotiated in the past have resulted in a lot of the chaos and the turmoil and even the violence that we've seen in so many parts of the world. And just, I think a lot of the way I behave in Congress, it has been shaped by a lot of the people in this room. And I am not perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect congressman. I did vote for a perfect congressman once. That's when I first ran for Congress. Then I served for 2 years and I wasn't so perfect anymore, but I voted for me for re-election because I was a hell of a lot better than the other guy. So, right, but the point of the matter is that, you know, here in Massachusetts, we have a, I think it's pretty fair to say, a forward-looking congressional delegation, who I think, with a little bit more pressure, could be even more engaged on some of these issues. So push us. Don't tell any of my colleagues I said that, but push us. And I look forward to working with all of you on the issues that